Is the story of a mother complete if we do not record the identity of her stillborn children? Today, I'm going to show you how you can add stillborn children to the family tree so you can make sure you're telling the complete story about the females on your family tree. Whenever you are recording the birth of any child, it is important that you use documentation, and particularly when you are trying to document a stillborn child, you want to base this information on some type of documentation. Now, there are not a lot of records that are created for stillbirths. There are some, and I'll show you one in just a moment. However, you can utilize interviews with people. You could use family Bibles. Occasionally, the stillborn child is recorded there. You can also utilize diaries and other first-hand accounts about the loss of a child. Just be sure to tell other people what sources you use, and if possible, share those images when you start recording that there was a stillborn child in your family tree. Over in Ohio, as you can see on the Ohio History Connection page, which is associated with the Ohio State Archives, there is a death index. And one of the things they have, because I remember being in the state archive and going past this collection, unfortunately I didn't have enough time to explore it. However, I now can search an index to this collection using the search form. In this collection, I went ahead and used the name Stillborn, and then I have to have part of a last name, so I'm just going to use a wildcard search. And then I'm going to limit it to Franklin County and do a search range. It's pretty broad, but I'm going to go ahead and use it 1913 to 1935 and click search. Now, I find that there are quite a few of the stillborns recorded. This is their volume number and their certificate, and I can go and look those up. So I do have evidence that a stillborn child was born with the last name Broadnex, possibly even Broadway, in Franklin County, Ohio, and I have the date. Now that you know that you have evidence of a stillborn child born to a woman, what do? Well, you're going to add that to the FamilySearch family tree. So let's say that for my grandma Emma, there is a record that said that when Lewis was born, she had 9 children. Now, I have one child that she recorded in her Bible, but this is not a stillborn death. I did have another record in 1904 about a child dying, and I did find that certificate, and there's still a few other children to add to this tree. So I click add a child. You simply add a child as you would if you had a living birth. So now I'm going to click on add a child, and now I'm going to put in the name. I don't know the name of the child, so I'm not going to put a first name. I do know that the father's name was Brown, so I'm going to do that. The child was mailed. They are deceased. And now I need to put the birth date and the birth year. So let's say 18 November 1905 in Columbus, Ohio. And then it's the same date and place. I just did a copy and Control-C, copy, Control-V, paste. And I went ahead and clicked next. Now it's going to search the database to see if I already have a match in there. I don't, so I'm going to click create person, and now I have the child in 1905. But how does anybody know that that child is a stillborn? Well, I need to go to the profile, and here I can click edit. Now you can add information. In this case, perhaps you knew that the child was stillborn at 3 months old, or the child was stillborn at 8 months old. There are a lot of records that actually tell you how far along in the pregnancy though what the mother was. So if you have it, go ahead and put it in. Then click save. And that's one way you can have stillborn. Another thing you can do is do add an event here on FamilySearch, and they do have a custom event for stillborn, and then you put in the place, Franklin County, Ohio, and then tell people where you got this information. So there you go. So in FamilySearch, you have a note and you have a custom field for putting a stillbirth. What are you going to add to your family tree about your stillborn child? Anything you have access to. So the child's name, but we'll give you some guidelines about that in just a minute. You're going to add the gender, you're going to add the birth date and place, the death date and place, and then attach any sources that you know that articulates this information. Now, some records do not differentiate between a child that is born and is deceased or a child that is born and lives for a few hours and then dies. So do your best based on the records that you have. Don't put your own presumptions into the records. If it says stillborn, that's what you go with. If it does not say stillborn, do not add a stillborn tag for a child that dies the same day that they were born. Try to be as clear as you can. Now, I'm over on Ancestry, and there's actually one cool thing that I wish a lot of platforms have, and that is the way to tag your ancestor so you're not cluttering up the suffix field with this extraneous information or adding crazy graphics. So all you have to do is click on My Tree Tags. If the child died young, so it lived for a few hours, lived for a few days, then you can put the died young relationship tree tag onto your tree. And notice it'll just be there in your profile, so whenever you come across this child, you can see, oh, they died young. If they did not die young, then you're going to need to add a custom tree tag. So to do that, you create a custom tree tag, stillborn, and hit create, and now you have stillborn attached to that tree, and you can attach it to anybody else in your family tree that is a stillborn child. So how do you record the name of your stillborn child? Consult the documents. If a document says the child's name is Lizzie Brown, then you name the child Lizzie Brown. Be careful. Just because it says it's Lizzie does not mean their name is Elizabeth. Use what is on the documents that are available to you. If you do not have a name identified on a document, or the document says something as infant, girl, boy, unnamed, or stillborn, do not put them in your tree. So in this tree, it has Miss, and Miss should not be in that field. You have the gender, and you can go ahead and click save. Now back to naming. If the father was named on the certificate, the genealogical standard is that you use the father's surname as the stillborn child's surname. So in this case, Geisler, because I do know that George Joseph Geisler was married to Eveline Townley Peake at this time period. So the last name would be Geisler. But not every mother identifies the name of a father. And in that case, then you would just use the mother's surname in place of the father's surname for the surname of a child. Now, if you have a stillborn child and you have no identity for the parents, I don't know how you're going to put that into the family tree, because you're just going to have a floating tree out there of this child with no parents' names. So I would refrain from adding a stillborn child with no known parents to the family tree. If you do know them, then follow those practices. If you have other questions, don't be afraid to ask, how do I add fill in the blank to my family tree, and I'll be happy to answer you. If you want more tips and tricks on how to get started in genealogy research, be sure to check out this video. And if you're ready for something new, check out this video right here. What are the things that what are you going to add to the family